Wildcat Research and Conservation Center recently detected a new jaguar in the southern part of the state. It's the fifth one they've spotted since 2011.
100 years ago, America hunted its jaguars down to the last cat, poisoned them, trapped them, and swore the species was gone from this country for good. Then the cameras started catching something impossible. One by one, wild jaguars began walking back across the border, into the same canyons where they were wiped out. And hidden trail cameras were waiting. 8 of them, documented over 3 decades.
I went to go and check this camera, flipped through all of the detections, and this jaguar appeared. I have had this camera in this canyon.
What those lenses caught in the dark, drinking, climbing, staring into the flash, is something almost no one believed they would ever see again. This is the story the footage refused to hide. An American animal. But to understand what those cameras were really capturing, you have to rewind. Not to a camera, to a bounty. Because 100 years ago, the jaguar was not a ghost, not a fluke wandering up from Mexico. It was an American animal, a resident. Its range covered southern Arizona and New Mexico, reached into Texas, and on rare occasions stretched as far north as the rim of the Grand Canyon and as far west as Southern California. Faded government reports and early settler photographs describe females with cubs near Flagstaff, a young jaguar near Grand Canyon Village, animals poisoned in hills that are now suburbs. The cat you picture only in the Amazon once hunted the high country of the American Southwest. Here is the part almost no one remembers. The word jaguar is often traced to an indigenous term meaning, roughly, he who kills with one leap. For the Maya, the cat was power itself, a creature thought to move between the world of the living and the dead. For the Tohono O'odham and other peoples of this land, it was never exotic. It was simply part of the place. And every jaguar carries a coat of rosettes as distinct as a human fingerprint, which is exactly how researchers tell one returning cat from another today. The claim runs deeper than you think. The jaguar's ancestors are thought to have crossed the ancient land bridge from Asia during the Pleistocene, and some researchers argue the species first took shape in the American West before spreading south. By the time Europeans arrived, it was woven into the landscape. Across the 20th century alone, more than 60 separate jaguar sightings were logged across Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, right up until the killing caught up with them. The killing years. Then, America decided it did not want them. In the early 20th century, government-funded predator control swept the West. The same machine that gutted the wolf and the grizzly turned on the jaguar. Ranchers and federal trappers shot them, poisoned them, ran them down with hounds. It was systematic. It was paid for with public money, and it worked. By mid-century, the jaguar was functionally gone from the country, and the dates are brutal in how precise they are. The last confirmed female jaguar in Arizona was killed in 1963, shot in the Apache National Forest, more than 150 miles north of the Mexican border. The last jaguar killed in central Arizona was taken by a government hunter in 1964. Arizona finally outlawed jaguar hunting in 1969, but by then, the math was already lost. There were no females left to protect. In New Mexico, the last known female was killed in 1986. The protections, in other words, showed up only after the animals they were written to save were already dead. So the paperwork was coming. It was just coming far too late to matter. Protection on paper. What protection there was flickered on and off like a bad signal. The federal government first listed the jaguar as endangered in 1972, but for years that protection did not fully reach the jaguars inside the United States. Full protection for the American population did not arrive until 1997, and only after conservationists forced the issue. For a quarter of a century, the largest cat on the continent drifted in and out of legal existence on paper, while on the ground, there were almost none left to argue over. But understand what that actually meant. Losing the breeding females was the clearest possible signal the species was finished here, and the agencies treated it as a closed case. For half a century, the official line was simple. The jaguar was a Mexican cat. Anything that wandered north was a stray male with no future, not worth building a recovery program around. Wildlife managers filed the animal away as natural history, a species that had belonged to this region once and would not belong to it again. And on that last point, The empty canyons were about to prove them spectacularly wrong. The story of what happened in those empty canyons is one this channel returns to again and again. Predators clawing their way back into country that spent a century trying to erase them. If that is the kind of story you want more of, take 1 second to subscribe and stay with this one, because the cats were about to do something almost no one in the agencies expected. The first photograph. It started with a rancher and a camera. In 1996, Warner Glenn was hunting mountain lions in the Pelanchillo Mountains, right on the Arizona and New Mexico line, when his dogs cornered the impossible. Not a lion, a living wild jaguar, close enough to kill. Every instinct told him to reach for the rifle. Instead, heart pounding, he raised his camera. Those photographs were the first ever captured of a live jaguar in the United States. The cat America had written off was undeniably still standing on American soil, and Glenn was not alone. That same year, across southern Arizona, camera traps in the Babukivari Mountains caught a different male. Researchers named him Macho B. For over a decade, he was a legend of those mountains, photographed again and again across the borderlands, the most documented wild jaguar the country had known. He outlived every wild jaguar on record and became living proof these cats could hold on inside the United States. For years, everything about his story pointed up, and then it turned. In February of 2009, Macho B was caught in a leg snare, fitted with a radio collar, and released. Within days, he was failing. The team recaptured him, and veterinarians at the Phoenix Zoo found his kidneys shutting down. He was euthanized on March 2nd. The capture, it turned out, had not been the lucky accident it was first sold as. A field biologist later pleaded guilty to a federal charge for his role in the trapping, and was barred from working with big cats. Here is the ugly part. The most famous jaguar in American history died at the hands of the very people studying him. An animal under federal protection, lost to the effort meant to save it. But the cameras did not stop, and neither did the cats. The cats keep coming. Between 2011 and 2015, a young male slipped into the Santa Rita Mountains, barely 25 miles from downtown Tucson. Conservation groups ran a contest to name him, and a local schoolchild won it with El Jefe, Spanish for the boss. For roughly 4 years, El Jefe lived in oak-studded canyons within sight of a major city, filmed drinking from streams and raking his claws down tree trunks before slipping back south out of frame. Then, in late 2016, another male surfaced in the Huachuca Mountains. Researchers named him Sombra, the Spanish word for shadow, and the name fit him perfectly. These animals moved like rumors, crossing dozens of miles of brutal terrain, appearing on one camera, then vanishing for months. And here is why the sightings kept clustering near the border. Just to the south, in the Mexican state of Sonora, a breeding population of jaguars has quietly held on, the closest source of cats to the United States. In 2024, Mexico ran one of its largest ever mammal surveys, hundreds of cameras just to count its jaguars. Every cat that walks into Arizona is a young male pushed out of that southern stronghold, hunting for unclaimed ground, following the corridors north until a camera catches him, which is exactly where this stops being a string of lucky accidents. A pattern emerges. Here is what separates the last 15 years from a century of scattered sightings. At the University of Arizona, a research team strung camera traps across the borderlands and quit treating the jaguar like a ghost story. Picture the grunt work. People hunched over glowing screens deep into the night, matching rosette patterns frame by frame like fingerprints. They pulled together more than 80 verified jaguar records stretching back roughly 160 years. Museum specimens, brittle newspaper clippings, old hunting trophies, modern footage, into one continuous picture. And that picture is unmistakable. Of the 8 individual jaguars documented in the United States in the past 3 decades, 5 have shown up in just the last 15 years. One lost cat wandering in circles could never produce that. This is a slow, deliberate drumbeat of animals testing the exact ground their ancestors were exterminated from. And in the winter that bridged 2023 into 2024, the cameras caught a jaguar no one had ever recorded before, the 8th documented in the country in 30 years. The Tohono O'odham Nation gave the cat a name in their own language, a quiet reminder that for the people who have been here longest, the jaguar was never a foreign animal. and the footage revealed something the old sightings never could. Over 15 years, the cameras traced the same ranges, the same hidden water sources, the same narrow corridors of public land, stitching the United States to the Mexican populations below. The jaguars were following a map, ancient pathways through the sky islands that no fence or highway had erased. The route home was still there. The cats had been waiting for the pressure that wiped them out to ease enough for one to risk the crossing, which leaves one enormous question hanging over it all. If they are coming home, is there still a home left to hold them? Room to return. They are coming back on their own. Whether the land can still hold them is the real question. And the science answers yes. Researchers have mapped more than 20 million acres of suitable jaguar habitat across the American Southwest, roughly the size of South Carolina, most of it public land managed by the Forest Service. By the most cited estimate, that habitat could eventually support 90 to 150 jaguars, a real breeding, self-sustaining population of the largest cat in the Americas, living inside the United States. To put that in scale, an estimated 170,000 jaguars still roam the earth across some 19 countries, most of them in Brazil and the Amazon. The American Southwest sits at the far northern edge of that whole range, the frontier of the species, an animal clawing back into ground it lost. So some people decided the cats should not have to do it alone. The proposal. Here is where the story takes a hard turn. The habitat exists, the cats are already arriving, and what one group of scientists proposed next made the slow, natural trickle look timid. In December of 2022, the Center for Biological Diversity filed a 107-page scientific petition with the federal government. The ask was blunt. Stop waiting for jaguars to wander north and hope they survive. Actively reintroduce them, releasing cats into the Gila National Forest in New Mexico, the single largest block of prime habitat left in the country. And they were not guessing about whether it works. While the United States argued about whether jaguars even belonged here, Argentina was proving what reintroduction can do. In the Ibero wetlands, jaguars had been gone for around 70 years. An organization called Rewilding Argentina began breeding cats and releasing them into the marshes, and in just a few years, they went from 0 to a breeding population of more than 35. Those cats roam the wetlands freely now, sightings multiply, and an ecosystem that lost its top predator is rebuilding around their return. The group's conservation director even flew to Tucson to lay it out in person. The Southwest asked the obvious question. If Argentina can bring the jaguar back from absolute zero, why can the United States not do the same, with 20 million empty acres sitting open and waiting? And then the government answered. The rejection. In January of 2024, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service rejected the petition. The reasoning was technical, and to the people who filed it, maddening. The agency argued that jaguars breed slowly, raise few cubs, and reproduce only intermittently, which in its judgment made it unlikely a reintroduced population could establish itself without heavy, constant human help. New Mexico's own game department went further, claiming there was little to no evidence jaguars ever held a breeding population in the state at all. And a bureaucratic no was not even the biggest problem, because at the same time, something was going up along the border. Researchers had warned that a 30-foot wall driven through the valleys these cats used to cross between Mexico and the United States could finish what bullets and poison started a century ago. One formal analysis predicted the wall, and the enforcement around it, could contribute to the loss of the jaguar, the ocelot, and other species on the American side. That did not come from activists. It came from a study of the project's own impact. A jaguar can swim, climb, and cover dozens of miles in a night. It cannot get through 30 feet of steel sunk in concrete. And before you write this off as just another animal story, understand what is at stake. Why it matters. Because a jaguar is not just a gorgeous face on a camera trap. It is an apex predator, and apex predators are the load-bearing walls of an entire ecosystem. Where jaguars hunt, studies find they account for a huge share of prey deaths, which keeps deer, javelina, and smaller animals in balance. Pull the top predator out, and the whole structure tilts. When America raised the jaguar, it kicked out a support beam of the southwestern landscape, and it has been living in the wreckage ever since. And here is the twist almost no one is tracking. The government has formally designated critical habitat for jaguars along the border, land meant to protect the ground they need. But that protected ground has been challenged and pared back in court. So at the exact moment more jaguars are showing up than ever, the official safe zone on the map is shrinking instead of growing. Someone, somewhere, keeps making it harder for these cats to come home. And not everyone wants them back, and the opposition is not all noise. Some ranchers argue the jaguar never truly belonged this far north and worry about their herds. But the fear of livestock losses may be wildly overblown. In Sonora, where jaguars and ranchers already share the same dirt, the cats kill only a tiny fraction of the herd in a given year, often well under 2%. The conflict on the ground tends to be far smaller than the politics built on top of it, which makes what is happening next all the more remarkable, because none of it, not the rejection, not the wall, not the shrinking map, has stopped the cats. Still coming. Here is the detail almost no one hears. The cameras that captured nearly every one of these returning jaguars are not run by some vast federal agency. They are tended by more than 40 volunteers, ordinary people who hike miles into the heat, the cold, and the isolation of those mountains, season after season, to swap memory cards and batteries on the off chance one frame in tens of thousands shows a returning ghost. The proof that America's jaguars are coming home has been gathered largely by people doing it for free. And despite the rejected petition, despite the shrinking habitat, despite the wall, the cats keep coming. In November of 2025, that University of Arizona camera network caught a male at a remote desert watering hole. A few months later, in early 2026, he was filmed there again, this time lingering nearly 5 minutes at the water's edge, drinking without hurry, completely at ease. Researchers had started calling him Sunoco, but here is the ache underneath all of it. Every one of these cats has been a lone male, and a lone male cannot rebuild a population by himself. Sooner or later, for the jaguar to truly come home, a female has to make the same journey north, or be helped to make it. Whether that happens by policy or simply by one cat deciding to walk, no one yet knows. For now, the jaguars returning to America are pioneers with no next generation, magnificent and alone, holding open a door the country still has not decided to walk through. As of 2026, the count stands at 8 documented jaguars in 3 decades, 5 of them in the last 15 years, and at least one still moving through the canyons of southern Arizona on camera. No reintroduction has been approved, the wall is still going up, and the jaguars are still coming anyway, quietly, one crossing at a time, taking back ground on their own terms while the country argues about whether to let them. The next one may already be out there in the dark tonight, walking north, waiting for a camera to blink. If you want to keep following the animals fighting their way back into the American wild, the predators this country tried to erase returning on their own terms, subscribe, and stay with the channel. And leave a comment with your answer to this. Should the United States actively bring the jaguar home by releasing cats into that empty habitat, or let the animals decide for themselves, one crossing at a time? The story is far from over, and the next chapter may already be padding north in the dark.